Today I'm making magical polymer clay toadstool mushrooms to use as a fairy garden accessory. Before we get started with clay, we need to take a closer look at what we're sculpting. See how toadstools often clump together? And take a look at the variety of the shapes. All kinds of texture there. It's not just a white stalk. And notice the white spots on top. They sit there, almost like breadcrumbs on a countertop. Why do I think they're like painted on spots? Okay, too many video games. I made some regular toadstool mushrooms, let's call them Muggle mushrooms, and one magical troll mushroom. I'll show you how I made the magical troll mushroom so that when you work alongside this video, you can do either or both Muggle or magical mushroom. Hi, I'm Caroline from CertainlyCaroline.com, and I'm here inspiring you to create a miniature fairy tale world with weekly miniature art and doll making videos. As always, links to the supplies I used for this tutorial will be in the description below. Also, I love to hear from you, so do send your questions my way. When is she going to get on with it? Enough intro already. Let's sculpt! Since I'm working with white clay, it's important to start with clean hands. Here I'm rolling out old clay in my hands to get the lint off. Here I'm using floral wire and I'm wrapping tinfoil around it to give it bulk. Now I'm wrapping the foil with white floral tape so the clay doesn't slide around. Here I'm simply wrapping the clay around the wire armature and smoothing it out. I use some white chalk dust to powder the stem, which prevents both lint and fingerprints. Remember the toadstool's complex stem? Let's start sculpting it. I'm using my favorite wooden tool here, but the side of a toothpick would work too. I found many different textures on the stems of toadstools when I studied them in the pictures. Here I'm adding lines that I saw in one photo. Using a brown chalk pastel and burnt sienna color, I carefully brush the color into the raw clay. Many toadstools have little flaps at the top of the stem. Not all of them, but many of them. It kind of looks like a tablecloth. It has similar folds and it looks flapped over the stem. And adding some color to that tablecloth thingy. Now I'm starting my toadstool top, shaving some yellow, orange, and light red chalks. Using Primo Sculpting Red here. I did the white stem before the red top so my hands wouldn't be stained with red while trying to work with the white. That can drive me crazy, so I found it's best just to be smart about it and do whites first. Pushing the clay dust into the red clay here. A lot of dust produces an interesting texture on the clay, which looked mushroomy. And I also used a toothbrush to create more texture on the top. Next, I'm going to work on the underside of the top, mixing together some brown and white here. You can also use gray and white. And shaping it and adding the red top. Adding gills with my X-Acto knife. Securing the top to the stem with a bit of soft clay here. Baking instructions. Now use cornstarch in a small tray. I used a cupcake tray and place the mushroom top down on the bed of the cornstarch. By the way, baking soda will also work. And bake according to your clay's instructions. I have a whole video on how to bake polymer clay, and I will put that link in the description below. While the Muggle mushrooms are baking, I work on making one of my mushrooms magical by adding a face. I envisioned something odd and ugly, squatty, and trollish. A troll woman with way too much makeup. Yeah. Trolls are so easy to sculpt because there's no rules. The uglier, the better. I'm liking this. Pretty fairies and mermaids, now those are difficult. I'm trying something new. I'm using eyes that I've already made. I'm excited about this, but hesitant. I researched whether or not the varnish that I put on my eyeballs can go into the oven with the clay while it's baking, and they say it can. Stay tuned to see what my results were. So I go ahead and bake my troll mushroom, and I'm really hoping that those already made eyeballs are going to work in the oven like I read they would. I check out her eyeballs as soon as she comes out of the oven. They're looking not so clear, but I think maybe I'll be able to live with it. Also, there's another problem. I'm not all that excited about my little troll. I realize something needs to change. I get an idea. Arms! I will add arms to her, and she will hold an acorn, and she will look amazing. Polymer clay is so awesome because you can always change things around if you want, even after baking. I get out my handy Dremel 3000 and drill a hole through the torso. Then I add wire and the floral tape again. And I wrap all the above with flattened out clay. I shape it into place and decide how my acorn will look. I made little pancake hands for her, and maybe you're thinking, why did you make pancake hands? And I've got to ask you, when was the last time you saw a mushroom with any hands? So I figured pancake hands were pretty good, and I threw her in the oven again. After baking and cooling, I lightly brush on some white Genesis paint. I use a dry brush technique, giving my troll a bit of a shabby chic look. To dry brush, you simply use a very minimal amount of paint and just kind of sweep your brush across the top of whatever you're painting. It works beautifully to create depth and to keep those details so we don't end up with a ghost. See how little my brush is loaded with the paint? Hardly any ammo there. I also use some red paint, blending it in with the wet white paint. Now you get to hear why I regretted my pre-made eyes decision. They turned out yellow after baking. I'm not kidding you. Thought I. I didn't like my little troll again. Another idea popped into my head. I will paint the eyes again. That's it. So I painted right over those eyes. Let's put some spots on the top of that mushroom. I rolled out a snake of white clay, and after it cooled, I cut it into tiny chips of white. Then I got out my liquid Sculpting and smoothed the liquid clay out over my mushroom top and sprinkled on the little white specks. I also added the liquid clay to the hands, the cheeks, the ears, and the nose, and then sprinkled the little white specks on those. It's off to the oven with her again. I will be applying the eyelashes next. How fun! You can find faux eyelashes in the cosmetics section at the grocery store, and they're great for doll making. I simply cut through them with my scalpel, put a dab of super glue on the doll eyelids, and then apply them one by one. This might seem frustrating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it actually goes pretty quickly. See, I told you this was fun. Once the super glue has dried, I get out my amazing magic gloss. Using a pointy cotton swab, what would you call it? I carefully dab the magic gloss onto the eyeball. This is to create a really cool, wet, glossy look. Then, to cure the magic gloss, I put Little Miss Troll Mushroom into a UFO. Okay, not a UFO. It's actually a UV lamp that I got at Hobby Lobby, but it looks like a UFO. I get out my Fabri-Tac, my faux moss, and a toothpick, and I apply the glue and stick on the moss. Of course, I want to finish with a little yellow acrylic paint for a more realistic look. And finally, I wrap the acorn with some Spanish moss and put it in her arm. Now she's a happy, ugly, cute troll, isn't she? As always, links to the supplies I used for this tutorial will be in the description below. Hey, thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for weekly miniature art and doll making videos every Monday, or sometimes Tuesday.